first and perhaps one of the most significant dynamics that needs to be acknowledged and kind of factored into our consideration is the increasing gap between the contemporary human experience, what it means to be alive and to be human now, and the ways in which humans have understood ourselves in the past. Because our story about who we are has changed, then I think the religious questions that go with the story we tell about who we are, the religious questions have changed. And even something as recent as the Avatar movie, I mean, that's celebrating a kind of amongst all the violence and the high-tech stuff, there's a line underneath there about if we could just be connected with each other and the web of life kind of theology or spirituality kind of coming through into the public domain. And I think that's sort of, I guess, symptomatic of the kind of shift in the religion question. It's not so much what do I do about my guilt, what do I do about when I die, how do I cope with the afflictions of being human in the meantime. It's more about where am I finding meaning, how am I connected, how can we turn this around by being together rather than the individual. So they're the kind of shifts. Life is to be lived as deeply and completely as possible here and now, rather than spent in preparation for a future life beyond the grave. Yeah, I think it's very true that the horizon has shifted. It's no longer I'm getting ready so that when I die I know that I'm okay in the next life. Whether or not there's a next life, I think a lot of people just hope there is, and if there isn't, well, it won't matter. If there isn't one, there's nothing to worry about. But I think the focus is, yes, on what about on this side of death, between now and the end, how do I really have a life that's worth living, that's really worth having, in its own terms, for here and now rather than for hereafter. No doubt the remnants of religious fundamentalism will linger long past their expiry date. They may even retain sufficient power to cause great suffering through religious conflict and communal strife. I'd like to think it's going to become, the sort of fundamentalist option is going to become less relevant. My fear, of course, is that it's not going to happen anytime soon, but I actually think in the big picture of things, in the long, sort of 100-year, 500-year cycle, pre-modern religions just won't be able to address the issues that postmodern people are dealing with. So to one extent, I think conservative traditional expressions of Christianity are an escape from the present by going back to the 1950s or the 1750s or whatever, ultimately unsustainable because they won't actually address the questions that people are having to live with in this new world that's almost on us. The religious progressive reads the Bible with one eye on the questions that arise from her own experience of life. This kind of reader is seeking wisdom for life here and now, not reassurance about life in the hereafter, and not certainty about events in the past. In the beginning, the books of the Hebrew Bible didn't come out as, here are the first 5 books of the Bible, there'll be another tranche of books in another 100 years or so, and then we've got a publishing schedule, we'll bring out first the Torah, then the prophets, then the writings and so on. But as those books which did emerge out of the life of the community were discovered to be useful and life-affirming and valuable, because they address questions of identity and they address questions of lifestyle, who we are and what we do, they become canonical. Early Christianity begins with the Hebrew Bible, but other books are also found to be life-giving. They address identity, they talk about lifestyle, so they become authoritative. And in going back to that understanding of Scripture, I actually think we're being true to the origins of Scripture, which is that its authority grows out of its usefulness in the life of the community. Religious progressives have a distinctive interest in the welfare of the world in which we live now and of which we are an integral part. Rather than delighting in prognostications about the end of the world, progressive readers of the Bible are looking for wisdom that assists us to live gracefully in the world now. The idea that Scripture just dropped out of the sky, that's always the point of view of people with religious authority a fair way down the track. So the rabbis believed that the Torah actually existed in heaven before God gave a copy to Moses. I don't think any Christians would accept that as a definition of Torah, nor in fact do we accept it as a definition of Scripture, but we come pretty close to that with the idea that God, if God didn't dictate Scripture, God at least determined what went into Scripture through a doctrine of inspiration. I guess I move the doctrine of inspiration to the other end and say when a community receives this text and the Spirit uses those texts to open up new possibilities of who we are and how we should live, that's when the community, and I think it has to be a community thing, not a personal thing. Like, I will never have my Bible, I'll always have the Bible of the community that I belong to, because it's a community decision to say these texts are not only sacred but they're life-giving, they tell us who we are. Because we have no personal need to defend the Bible as the inerrant product of an infallible God, religious progressives can accept the Bible, warts and all, as a mixture of diverse traditions that have varying degrees of relevance to our situation. But we're at least trying to work out how you would do the Christian thing in this new kind of world. If you didn't just take all the baggage from the past and repaint the suitcase or something, how would you do the Jesus thing in this kind of a world? Now, we will probably come up with lots of wrong solutions, projects, attempts to do it that won't work out. But I see progressive Christianity as like a laboratory for, well, how would we do it in a changed set of circumstances? And I think some of the answers which we will probably discover may be part of the long-term future of Christianity, whereas I actually think that simply reiterating the past is just the sort of dinosaurs collecting in the valley, and ultimately there won't be enough food in the valley to keep those dinosaurs going.